The back door of the bar slammed so hard that Audrey almost dropped her tray with 6 old fashions. When she whipped around, ready to send the intruder back to the street, she found a breathless man with disheveled hair and desperate blue eyes like someone fleeing their own shadow. "Please," he whispered, his hands trembling as he shut the door behind him. "I just need a minute. Just 1 minute." Audrey narrowed her eyes, analyzing the stranger with the suspicion of someone who had learned the hard way that handsome, desperate men always bring trouble. Tall, broad shoulders, a jawline that could cut glass, and that kind of irritating beauty that seemed straight out of an expensive cologne commercial, probably just another drunk tourist running from an angry girlfriend. "Look," she began, balancing the tray on her hip. "This isn't a fugitive shelter. There's a door in the front, you know, the one normal people use." He flashed a crooked smile, half embarrassed, half charming, that made something strange happen in Audrey's stomach. Something she ignored completely, because she had no time for nonsense. She had bills to pay, a 4-year-old daughter waiting at home, and zero patience for men who thought a pretty smile solved everything. I know," he said, running his hand through his dark hair. "But outside there are people, lots of people, with cameras, paparazzi." Audrey arched an eyebrow, genuinely surprised. "Are you famous or something?" His expression oscillated between relief and something like admiration. "You really don't know who I am." "Should I?" she shot back, impatient. "My shift ends in 3 hours and I still have 27 orders to deliver. So, unless you're the Pope or LeBron James, frankly, I don't care." He laughed. Not a polite chuckle, but a genuine belly laugh that lit up his entire face and made several customers turn to look. And it was in that moment that Audrey realized this man had the kind of laugh that made you want to laugh along, even without knowing the joke. "Fair enough," he said, still smiling. "Can I just stay here until the crowd outside disperses? I promise not to get in the way." Audrey studied him for several more seconds, biting her lower lip while calculating the risks. Her boss, Charlie, a beer-bellied Irishman with a soft heart, probably wouldn't mind. But she had principles. Nobody stayed for free in her territory. "You can stay," she finally said, turning to continue with her work. "But only if you help. Nobody stands around with their arms crossed here." Jonathan Webb, not that she knew yet, blinked in surprise. In his 28 years of life, being the son of billionaires and a meteoric rising actor in Hollywood, nobody had ever put him to work as a condition of hospitality. People usually begged for his presence, offered expensive drinks, asked for autographs. This woman with intense brown eyes and a sauce-stained apron was doing the opposite. And strangely, that was the most refreshing thing that had happened to him in years. "Seriously?" he asked, a mixture of shock and amusement in his voice. "Seriously," Audrey confirmed, already moving toward the crowded tables. "See that counter over there? There are about 15 dirty glasses. Start with those. And be careful not to break anything, because it comes out of your salary. But I don't have a salary here." "Exactly. So don't break anything." And so, while the paparazzi waited outside and the world of fame pulsed, frantically searching for him, Jonathan Webb, heir to the Webb fortune and one of the most sought-after stars of the moment, rolled up the sleeves of his absurdly expensive shirt and began washing dishes in an Indianapolis bar that smelled of spilled beer and fried chicken wings. Half an hour later, Audrey returned to the kitchen and found him not only washing dishes, but chatting animatedly with Charlie about the Colts. Her boss was laughing so hard he was holding his belly, and the strange stranger was gesturing exaggeratedly, imitating a quarterback throwing a touchdown pass. "You know football?" she asked, genuinely surprised. Jonathan turned to her, blue eyes sparkling. "I'm kind of a fanatic, actually. My dad wanted me to play tennis, polo, those rich people things, but I always preferred football." The phrase came out naturally, but Audrey caught something in it. "Rich people things?" He swallowed hard. Figure of speech. Charlie, completely oblivious to the tension, clapped Jonathan on the back. "This guy's great. Audrey, let him stay. We could use someone else in the kitchen." "He's not staying, Charlie," she said, grabbing more orders from the pickup counter. "He's just hiding from—" "Whatever. Paparazzi," Jonathan answered quietly, but this time there was something more serious in his voice. They never leave me alone. Ever." Audrey stopped, looked at him truly for the first time since he had entered. Beneath the irritating beauty and commercial smile, there was something tired, something genuine. And she, who had a powerful radar for fakeness developed from years of disappointments, detected nothing there but raw honesty. "All right," she sighed. "Stay. But keep helping." And he helped. For the next 3 hours, Jonathan Webb did things he had never done in his life: served tables, carried beer crates, made cocktails under Audrey's strict supervision, who rolled her eyes dramatically when he almost spilled whiskey on her shoe, and even cleaned a table where someone had spilled nachos. The customers didn't recognize him. Nobody expected to see a Hollywood star cleaning tables in a mediocre Indianapolis bar. And that invisibility was so liberating that Jonathan felt, for the first time in years, that he could simply breathe. "You're terrible at this," Audrey commented when he tried to balance 4 plates at once and almost dropped them all. She grabbed 2 from him with a movement so smooth it looked like dancing. "Have you ever worked at anything in your life, or were you born with a silver spoon?" Jonathan froze. I've worked, yes." "Doing what? Hand model for watch commercials?" she teased, sarcastic, because clearly it wasn't anything physical. He laughed, but the laugh came out strange. "It's complicated." "Everything in life is complicated, sweetheart," Audrey shot back, already walking away. "The difference is some of us don't have a choice but to deal with it." The words hung in the air like an inconvenient reminder of their different worlds. But Jonathan wasn't offended. On the contrary, there was something incredibly real about this woman. No flattery, no fakeness, just cutting honesty and a dignity that all the money in the world couldn't buy. When the bar finally began to empty, around 1 in the morning, Audrey sat down for the first time in hours, taking off her shoes and massaging her swollen feet. Jonathan, exhausted but strangely satisfied, collapsed in the chair beside her. "Your feet must be killing you," he said. "Every single day," she responded with a tired half-smile. "Welcome to the life of a waitress." "How long have you been doing this?" "Since I got here. Almost 2 years." She grabbed a bottle of water, drinking half in one gulp. "And you? How long are you going to keep hiding from paparazzi?" "Good question," Jonathan murmured, rubbing his face. "Probably until they realize I'm not as interesting as they think." Audrey studied him for a moment, her head slightly tilted. "You're an actor, right? That's why they chase you." He nodded slowly. "Among other things. Must be horrible. Not having privacy, I mean. It's suffocating," he admitted, and there was so much truth in that single word that Audrey felt something tighten in her chest. But today was different. Nobody recognized me here. Nobody treated me like a valuable thing on display. It was just normal. Normal! Audrey laughed, but without cruelty. "Honey, you washed dishes in a dive bar in Indianapolis on a Friday night. If that's your definition of normal, your life must be very strange." "It is," he agreed, smiling, "but I liked your version of normal." Something passed between them in that moment, something small, fragile, frightening. A spark that neither was looking for, but that appeared anyway, stubborn as a weed growing through cracked concrete. "What's your name?" Audrey asked softly. "Jonathan," he answered, "just that. No last name, no titles, no baggage. Just Jonathan." "Audrey," she said back. "Thank you for letting me stay, Audrey." She shrugged, trying to seem indifferent, but the corner of her mouth betrayed a smile. "Next time, use the front door like normal people." "He'll try to remember that," he said, standing up. Outside, the lights from the paparazzi cars had finally disappeared. He could leave, return to his life of luxury, million-dollar contracts and deafening loneliness. Can I come back sometime?" Audrey arched an eyebrow. "To wash more dishes? To see you again?" Her heart skipped a beat, just one. But it was enough to set off all the alarms in her head. Handsome men with pretty words were her kryptonite. That was how she ended up alone, pregnant and abandoned at 17. "Look, Jonathan," she began. her voice suddenly cold and protective. "You seem nice, but I'm not looking for anything. I have a daughter, 2 jobs, and 0 patience for complications. So, thanks for the help today, but it's better to leave it at that." Jonathan should have agreed, should have said goodnight and disappeared forever, but something about this woman, perhaps the strength in her tired eyes, perhaps the vulnerability she hid behind sharp sarcasm, made him stand there, searching for the right words. "I understand," he said finally, "and I respect that. But for the record, I didn't come here looking for complications either. Just someone real. And you're the most real person I've met in a very long time." Before Audrey could respond, the front door burst open violently. 3 photographers rushed in, cameras already firing, flashes exploding like fireworks. "Jonathan Webb, is it true you're dating a waitress?" And in that moment, Audrey Simmons' world collapsed without her yet understanding the magnitude of the destruction that was coming. Audrey needed exactly 8 seconds to process 3 devastating pieces of information. First, the blinding flashes of cameras invading the bar like luminous missiles. Second, the hysterical shouts of photographers calling the name of the man who had just washed dishes beside her. Third, and most terrifying, the expression of absolute panic on Jonathan's face, not the panic of someone being bothered, but the panic of someone who had just exposed an innocent person to real danger. "Oh, Jonathan, who is she? New girlfriend? How long have you been together? Does she know you're the heir to the Webb fortune?" The last question hit Audrey like a punch to the stomach. Heir? Webb? Her brain, still functioning in slow motion, began connecting the dots. Jonathan Webb, the Jonathan Webb, famous actor but not just an actor, heir to one of the richest families in the United States. And she, idiot that she was, had spent the last 3 hours making jokes about him being a spoiled playboy without having the slightest idea how close to the truth she was. "Don't answer anything," Jonathan whispered to her, already positioning his body between Audrey and the cameras, trying to protect her from the flashes. But it was too late. She was already there, frozen like an animal in headlights, her huge, frightened eyes captured in high definition by at least 6 different lenses. Charlie emerged from the kitchen, yelling about private property and calling the police, but the photographers ignored him completely. They had what they wanted. Jonathan Webb, Hollywood's most eligible bachelor, hiding in a dive bar with an unknown waitress in a stained apron and messy hair. "Get out of here!" Jonathan roared, his voice coming out more authoritative than Audrey had ever heard him speak. "Now!" But as he shouted, he instinctively grabbed Audrey's hand, pulling her behind him, and it was that gesture, that single moment of protection captured by all the cameras simultaneously, that sealed her fate for the coming weeks. It took another 15 minutes for security from the nearby shopping mall to finally expel the photographers. When silence finally returned to the bar, Audrey was sitting in a chair, trembling, while Jonathan knelt in front of her, guilt stamped on every line of his perfect face. "Audrey, I'm so sorry," he began, her hand still held in his, though she didn't even notice. I never wanted this to happen." "Heir?" she whispered, her voice coming out strange. "You're the heir to a fortune and didn't think it was relevant to mention." "I'm not," he started, but stopped. How to explain that technically he was an heir, but hated every second of it? "It's complicated." "You already said that," she cut him off, finally pulling her hands back and hugging herself. "Seems like everything in your life is complicated, Jonathan. Or should I call you Mr. Webb?" The irony in her voice was a defense, he knew that, but it hurt anyway. "Just Jonathan, please." Charlie brought Audrey a glass of water, murmuring something reassuring before returning to the kitchen, giving them privacy. She drank all the water, trying to organize the chaotic thoughts in her head. "Those photos are going to come out, aren't they?" she finally asked, and Jonathan hated having to confirm with a nod. "And they're going to say that I'm your girlfriend, or something like that?" "Probably," he admitted miserably. "Tabloids love creating stories, but he'll correct it. He'll give a statement saying you're just a friend who helped me when I was just a friend. Audrey interrupted, and there was something dangerous in her voice now. You think that's going to help Jonathan? You think when your legion of millionaire fans see a waitress in the same photo as you, they're going to think, oh, how nice, an unlikely friendship? Or are they going to destroy me on social media? Jonathan opened his mouth but couldn't argue, because she was right. Completely devastatingly right. He'll protect you, he promised, desperate. He'll hire security. He'll sue anyone who publishes lies. You can't do anything. Audrey exploded, standing up so abruptly the chair almost fell. You don't understand, do you? I'm not like you. I don't have expensive lawyers. I don't have millions in the bank. I don't have a powerful last name to protect me. I'm just a waitress trying to survive and raise my daughter in peace. The mention of her daughter made something break inside Jonathan. Emma, he murmured, remembering the name she had mentioned before. You're worried about her. Of course I'm worried. Tears finally escaping from Audrey's eyes, though she wiped them away angrily. What if someone recognizes her at daycare? What if they start asking questions about her father? What if... She didn't finish the sentence, but Jonathan understood. There was more to her story, more fears he didn't know yet, and he hated himself for bringing this chaos into the life of someone who clearly already had enough problems. "I'm sorry," was all he could say, his voice thick. "I really, really am sorry." Audrey took a deep breath, trying to regain control. Crying wouldn't solve anything. It never did. You need to leave, Jonathan, and not come back. The less connection we have, the better. But go, she insisted, pointing to the door with a trembling hand. Please, just go. Jonathan should have gone. Should have respected her request, disappeared, and let the tabloids forget about the matter in a week. But when he reached the door and looked back, seeing Audrey hugging herself, trying to look strong while clearly falling apart, something inside him simply refused to leave. "I'm going to fix this," he said, and there was a determination in his voice that made Audrey look at him. "I don't know how yet, but I will. I promise." And then he left before she could protest again, leaving her alone in the empty bar, with the smell of old beer and the weight of a life about to turn upside down. The next morning, Audrey woke up to 47 missed calls and her message inbox full. Her first thought was that something had happened to Emma, but the little girl was sleeping peacefully in the small bedroom they shared, her dark hair spread on the pillow like a messy halo. Her second thought was pure panic when she opened her phone and saw the flood of notifications. Her photo, hers, was everywhere. On gossip sites, on social media pages, even in WhatsApp groups of people she didn't even know. Jonathan Webb works in bar alongside mysterious brunette billionaire heir caught with waitress in Indianapolis, who is Jonathan Webb's new conquest. And below each headline in the comments was the hell she had predicted. Clearly a gold digger, another one who wants his money. She's not even pretty. What did he see in her? Probably an illegal immigrant. Bet she's already pregnant trying to trap him. Audrey felt breakfast rising up her throat. She ran to the bathroom and vomited, her body shaking violently as reality hit her in nauseating waves. Her private life, her dignity, her peace, all shattered in less than 12 hours. When she finally managed to get up, she washed her face with cold water and looked at herself in the cracked mirror. Her brown eyes were reddened, skin pale, but chin up. "You've been through worse things," she whispered to her own reflection. "You've survived worse things." But had she? The doorbell rang and kept ringing and ringing. When Audrey finally opened the door, just a crack, the security chain still attached, she found 3 reporters with microphones and a huge camera. "Audrey Simmons, can we ask a few questions about your relationship with Jonathan Webb?" She slammed the door in their faces and leaned against it, her heart racing. How did they know where she lived? How did they find out so fast? "Mommy!" Emma's sleepy little voice called from the bedroom. "Who's there?" "Nobody, sweetie," Audrey answered, forcing her voice to sound normal as she walked back. "Go back to sleep." But Emma was sitting up in bed, rubbing her eyes. "Why are you crying?" "I'm not crying, princess," Audrey lied, picking up her daughter and hugging her like she was a lifeline. "I'm just tired." Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Rachel, her best friend and neighbor. The message was short and urgent. Girl, check the news now. Audrey put Emma back in bed with her favorite stuffed bunny and turned on the old living room TV, switching to a news channel. And there it was, a whole segment about her life, about Emma. Sources close to the situation reveal that Audrey Simmons, 21 years old, is a single mother and works as a waitress in Indianapolis. Little is known about the child's father, but it is speculated that she may be interested in the web fortune. Audrey turned off the TV, shaking with rage and humiliation. They had no right. They had no right to talk about her daughter, about her life, about choices she made when she was practically a child herself. Another knock on the door. This time, she didn't even move, but then she heard a familiar voice from the other side. Audrey, it's me. Jonathan, please open up. She should have left him out there, should have yelled for him to leave and never come back. But there was something in his voice, exhaustion, desperation, guilt, that made her, against every instinct of self-preservation, open the door. Jonathan was unrecognizable. Cap pulled down over his eyes, dark sunglasses, dark clothes. And yet he still managed to look absurdly handsome in a way that was deeply irritating. "What do you want?" she asked, blocking the entrance. "To help," he said simply. "I know you don't want to see me. I know I'm making things worse. But I brought lawyers, security guards, people who can—" "No," Audrey cut him off. "I don't want any of that. Audrey, be reasonable." "Reasonable?" she almost shouted, but controlled herself, remembering Emma in the next room. "You destroyed my life in one night, and now you want to save me with expensive lawyers? You think that's how it works? I don't know how it works." Jonathan shot back, frustration finally leaking out. "I've never dealt with this before. I've never brought this circus into someone's life that I—" He stopped, swallowing the words that almost came out. "That you what?" Audrey challenged, crossing her arms. "That I care about," he admitted quietly. "I know we just met yesterday. I know it sounds crazy, but I care what happens to you. You don't know me," she said, but her voice came out less firm than intended. "Then let me know you," Jonathan pleaded, taking a step forward. "Let me fix this. Let me—" "Is Jonathan Webb there?" A shout from the street interrupted them. More paparazzi had found the address. In seconds, there would be a crowd at the door. "Shit," Jonathan whispered. And that's when Audrey Simmons made the most impulsive and potentially disastrous decision of her life. She grabbed Jonathan by the hand and pulled him inside the apartment, locking the door behind him. "Stay quiet," she ordered, "and pray my daughter doesn't wake up and ask why there's a stranger in our living room." Jonathan nodded, but as he looked around the small apartment, the patched sofa, the tiny kitchen, the toys scattered on the floor, he understood exactly the size of the chasm between their worlds, and wondered, for the first time, if any bridge would be strong enough to connect them. Audrey's apartment had exactly 450 square feet. Jonathan knew this because he had spent the last 20 minutes trying to make himself as small as possible on the tiny sofa, while she made coffee in the kitchen that was literally 3 steps away. Everything was cramped, faded, lived in, so different from his 1,000-square-foot mansion with double-height ceilings that he felt a pang of shame at the glaring contrast. But there was something in that space, something warm. The walls were covered with children's drawings, yellow suns, crooked houses, stick-figure people. A colorful crocheted blanket hung from the sofa arm. Children's books stacked in a cardboard box improvised as a bookshelf. A real home, Jonathan realized. Not just an expensive place full of expensive things. Here, Audrey handed him a steaming mug of coffee, sitting on the other end of the sofa with her own cup. "There's no sugar. It ran out yesterday." "That's fine," Jonathan said, holding the mug with both hands. "Thank you." They drank in silence for a moment, the atmosphere oscillating between discomfort and something dangerously close to intimacy. Outside, voices of photographers still echoed occasionally, but they seemed to be giving up on camping at the door. "Your daughter didn't wake up," Jonathan commented finally. "Emma sleeps like a rock," Audrey responded, a small, involuntary smile appearing. "It's the only good thing she inherited from her father." Jonathan caught the bitterness hidden there. "He's not around. He doesn't even really know she exists," Audrey said, staring at the coffee as if the words physically hurt. "I mean, he knows she was born, but he never wanted to see her, never wanted to help, said he was too young to be a father and disappeared. Last time I heard from him was when he blocked me on all social media." "What an idiot," Jonathan murmured, genuinely shocked. Audrey shrugged, but her shoulders were tense. At least he was honest. Better than pretending interest and abandoning her later. And honestly, she's better off without a father than having one who doesn't want her. There was so much pain hidden in that sentence that Jonathan felt something tighten in his chest. She was so young, only 21 years old, but spoke with the exhausted wisdom of someone who had already been broken and had to learn to rebuild herself alone. "How old were you?" he asked gently. 17 when I got pregnant, 18 when she was born." Audrey finally looked him in the eyes. "And before you ask, no, I don't regret it. Emma is the best thing that ever happened to me. But it is hard, very hard." "I can imagine," Jonathan said, and the sincerity in his voice made Audrey lower her guard a bit. "What about you?" she asked, settling better on the sofa and pulling her legs under her body. "What's your story?" "Besides being absurdly rich and famous, obviously." Jonathan laughed without humor. "It's not as glamorous as it seems." "Boo-hoo!" Audrey made a fake crying sound. "What a tragedy to be a billionaire." He smiled, but there was sadness there. "My family, they have expectations, many expectations. My dad wanted me to take over the family business. My mom wanted me to marry someone appropriate, read another bored heiress. But I always wanted to do something of my own, you know? Something that wasn't just continuing the Webb legacy. So you became an actor? So I became an actor," he confirmed. "And I discovered I was good at it. Maybe even great. But then came the fame, the paparazzi, people wanting something from me all the time. Money, connections, influence. Nobody sees me as just Jonathan. I'm always Jonathan Webb, heir, actor, trophy." "Sounds lonely," Audrey murmured. "It is," he agreed, his eyes meeting hers. "That's why yesterday was so important to me. You really didn't know who I was. You treated me like a normal human being, made me wash dishes for God's sake." Audrey laughed, the sound genuine and beautiful. "You were terrible at it, by the way." "I was horrible." Jonathan laughed along. "But I loved every second. The moment stretched between them, warm and fragile, until Emma appeared in the bedroom doorway, rubbing her eyes and holding a worn, stuffed rabbit. "Mommy, who's he?" Audrey froze. Jonathan froze. And then, surprisingly, it was he who reacted first, crouching down to get to the girl's height. "Hi," he said with the gentlest smile Audrey had ever seen. "I'm Jonathan, a friend of your mom's." Emma studied him with the peculiar seriousness of small children. "You're big. You'll be big too when you grow up," Jonathan responded, completely serious. "Will I be tall like Mommy?" "I think you'll be even taller." Emma considered this for a moment, then nodded, satisfied. "Okay then. Do you want to have breakfast with us?" Audrey was about to refuse for her, but Jonathan was already saying he'd love to. Half an hour later, the three of them were sitting around the tiny kitchen table, eating pancakes that Audrey improvised with the little she had in the pantry. Emma was excitedly telling them about her daycare teacher, about a boy who had pulled her hair, and about how she had built the tallest block castle in the class. Jonathan listened with genuine attention, asking questions and reacting at the right moments, and Audrey found herself watching the scene with something dangerous forming in her chest. It wasn't fair. It wasn't fair that he was so good with Emma. It wasn't fair that he seemed to genuinely care. It wasn't fair that he was there, eating burnt pancakes in her cramped kitchen, looking perfectly happy. "Can you lift, Mommy?" Emma suddenly asked, and Jonathan blinked, confused. "What?" "Lucas' dad can lift his mum like this." Emma made a motion of lifting something overhead. "Can you?" "Emma!" Audrey intervened, mortified. "You don't ask those things!" But Jonathan was laughing, that laugh that lit up his entire face. "I think I can, yes, but I'd need your mum's permission first." "Definitely don't have permission," Audrey said quickly, her cheeks flushing. "Oh, that's no fun," Emma complained. Lucas said it's super cool. After breakfast, while Emma was distracted coloring in the living room, Jonathan helped Audrey wash the dishes. They worked in comfortable silence, he washing and she drying, and there was something domestically intimate about it that scared them both. "She's incredible," Jonathan said quietly, rinsing the last plate. "Emma, she's incredible." "I know," Audrey responded with obvious maternal pride. "She's the best of me." "No," Jonathan turned to her, serious. "You're incredible. Raising a daughter alone at 18, working 2 jobs, moving to a new state. Audrey, you're one of the strongest people I've ever met." She was speechless for a moment, not used to such sincere compliments. Thank you. Will you go out with me?" he asked suddenly. Audrey blinked. "What? A date, you, me, no paparazzi, no expectations, just trying to do this right." "Jonathan," she began, hesitant, "our situation is impossible. You saw the news. You saw what they're saying about me." "Then let's prove them wrong," he argued. "Let's show it's not about money or fame, that it's just 2 people who what?" she challenged. "Who just met yesterday, who feel something," he completed, bold. "Don't lie. You felt it too, yesterday at the bar, and now here." Audrey wanted to deny. Every rational instinct screamed to deny, but she looked into his blue eyes and saw vulnerability, hope, something genuine that she couldn't ignore. "One date," she finally conceded, "just one, to see if this is real or just temporary insanity." The smile Jonathan broke open could light up all of Indianapolis. "You won't regret it." "I probably will," she murmured, but she was smiling too. They didn't know yet, but outside, a photographer had captured Jonathan entering the building hours before, and the new headline was already being prepared. "Jonathan Webb spends night with mysterious waitress. Relationship more serious than we imagined." The storm was just beginning. The secret date happened 3 days later at a small American bistro that Rachel had recommended, hidden on a side street of Fountain Square where paparazzi rarely ventured. Jonathan arrived disguised again, cap, dark sunglasses, anonymous jacket, but as soon as he entered and saw Audrey waiting at a corner table, the whole world disappeared. She was wearing a simple navy blue dress, her hair falling in waves over her shoulders, red lipstick that made her lips impossible to ignore. Nothing luxurious, no designer labels, but she was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. "Hi," he said, suddenly nervous like a teenager on his first date. "Hi," she responded, equally nervous, fidgeting with the napkin on the table. They sat down. There was an awkward silence. Then Jonathan asked, "How's Emma?" And it was like opening a floodgate. Audrey instantly lit up, telling him about how her daughter had learned a new song at daycare and kept singing it all night until she fell asleep. How she asked impossible questions like, "Why doesn't the sky fall?" and "Do dogs dream about cats?" How she was stubborn, funny, sweet, and completely exasperating at the same time. Jonathan listened fascinated, asking questions, laughing at the right moments, and Audrey realized he genuinely cared. He wasn't just being polite. He genuinely wanted to know about Emma. "What about you?" she asked when she finally stopped to breathe. "How was your week?" "Chaotic," Jonathan admitted. "My mother called 17 times. My agent called 32 times. The family's press office is having a collective meltdown. Because of you?" "Because of us," he corrected. "The photos, the rumors, they hate not having control of the narrative." Audrey bit her lip. "Maybe we should stop, before it gets worse." "No," Jonathan said firmly, taking her hand across the table. "I won't let them decide who I can or can't be with. But I'm not from your world, Jonathan." "Thank God," he responded, serious. "My world is cold, fake, and miserable. Your world has burnt pancakes and drawings on the walls and the best 4-year-old girl I've ever met." Audrey laughed, her eyes shining. "Your expectations are very low." "Or finally just right," he shot back. Dinner was surprisingly perfect. They talked about everything: favorite movies, music they hated, ridiculous childhood fears. Jonathan confessed he was terrified of clowns. Audrey admitted she couldn't swim and was afraid of the ocean. He told her about the time he broke his nose doing his own action scene. She described Emma's birth with details that made him twist his face in imagined sympathy. It was working. It was really working. Maybe, just maybe, this could work out. And then the restaurant door burst open and Marcus Hayes walked in. Audrey froze completely. Her ex-boyfriend, Emma's father, the man who had abandoned her pregnant and never looked back. He was there, in front of her, after 4 years. "Audrey," Marcus said, and his voice was exactly as she remembered, charming, fake, dangerous. "What a surprise to find you here." "What do you want?" she asked, her voice coming out firmer than expected. Marcus didn't even look at her. His eyes were fixed on Jonathan, assessing, calculating. "So it's true. You're with the Webb heir." "That's none of your business," Audrey responded. "Our daughter isn't my business," Marcus retorted, and Audrey felt her blood freeze. He had never, in 4 years, referred to Emma as our daughter, because I saw the photos, saw the comments, and I got to thinking, will it be safe for Emma to be around someone so exposed, with paparazzi following you all the time? "You're kidding," Audrey said incredulously. "You, who never gave a dime, never asked if she was okay, are now worried about safety." Her father," Marcus said, crossing his arms. "I have rights." Jonathan, who had been quiet until then, stood up. "You have no rights. You disappeared from her life before she was even born." Marcus gave an unpleasant smile. "And what are you? The new daddy? Think you can buy an instant family just because you have money?" "Get out of here, Marcus," Audrey intervened, also standing up. "Now!" "I'm leaving," he agreed, shrugging. "But I'm warning you, I'm going to get a lawyer. I want to regularize my daughter's situation, especially now that she's apparently being exposed to the media without my consent." "Your consent?" Audrey almost shouted. "You gave up that right 4 years ago." "We'll see what a judge thinks about that," Marcus said, already turning to leave. But before leaving, he looked at Jonathan. "By the way, your staff is amazing. They got my number so fast when I called asking about you and Audrey," and then he left, leaving devastating silence behind. "He's bluffing," Jonathan said immediately. "He won't get anything." But Audrey was trembling. "You don't understand. He can use this against me. He can say, I'm exposing Emma to danger, that I'm an irresponsible mother. And judges, they always favor fathers with money. Always. I'll help you," Jonathan promised. "I'll hire the best lawyers. No," Audrey exploded. "Don't you see? That's exactly what he wants. He wants you to spend money on me, wants to prove I'm using you. And maybe he's right." "What?" Jonathan stared at her, shocked. "Maybe I shouldn't be doing this," she continued, the words coming out in a desperate torrent. "Maybe I should protect Emma from all of this, from the cameras, the comments, the dangers of being near someone famous." "Audrey, no." Jonathan tried to approach, but she backed away. "I need to go," she said, grabbing her purse with shaking hands. "I need to think. Please," Jonathan begged, "don't let him win like this." But Audrey was already leaving the restaurant, tears streaming down her face. And for the first time since they met, Jonathan Webb felt completely powerless. 3 days passed. 3 days in which Audrey didn't answer calls, didn't respond to messages, simply disappeared. Jonathan was going crazy. He had given her space, as she asked, but the worry was consuming him alive, until Rachel, Audrey's best friend, showed up at his mansion door. "She's suffering," Rachel said bluntly, as soon as Jonathan opened the door. "She's working herself to death, barely sleeping, pretending to Emma that everything's fine." "I want to help," Jonathan said desperately, "but she won't let me." "Because she's afraid," Rachel explained. Audrey was abandoned by Emma's father at the worst possible moment. She was humiliated, rejected, forced to do everything alone. And now, when she's finally starting to trust someone again, the ghost of the past appears threatening everything. "What do I do?" Jonathan asked, and there was so much sincerity in his voice that Rachel almost felt sorry. "Show her you're not leaving," she said simply, "not with words, with actions. Because Audrey has heard pretty promises before. She needs to see that you're different." And Jonathan understood. He understood perfectly. The next day, Audrey came home from her morning shift and found a box at the apartment door. No sender, but with her name written by hand in beautiful handwriting. Suspicious, she opened it. Inside were expensive school supplies, imported colored pencils, professional drawing notebooks, modeling clay that didn't stain, and a note for the best block castle architect I know. May she continue building incredible things. J. Audrey felt her eyes burn. The next day, she found another box, this time with ingredients she couldn't easily find in Indianapolis: organic maple syrup, artisanal peanut butter, fancy hot chocolate mix. The note said, "Because everyone deserves a taste of comfort, J." And on the third day, there was no box. There was Jonathan sitting on the building stairs, holding a bouquet of cheap flowers from the corner market. "Before you say anything," he said when he saw her standing up quickly, "I know you asked for space. I know I'm taking a risk, but I need you to know I'm not leaving. No matter what your ex tries, no matter what my family says, no matter how many times you try to push me away. Jonathan, I like you," he continued, taking a step forward. "I like Emma. I like the life you've built. I like how you're strong and scared at the same time. I like how you pretend you don't care but look at me when you think I'm not watching." "I don't do that," Audrey protested weakly, but she was smiling through tears. "You do," he insisted, also smiling, "and I do the same, because what I'm feeling for you isn't about one night. It's not about escaping my life. It's about wanting to build something new, something real." Audrey swallowed hard. "My life is a mess, Jonathan. So is mine. We match. It's going to be hard. I know. Your family will hate me. Probably. The media will destroy us. They're already trying." "Then why do you want this?" she asked, genuinely confused. Jonathan took another step, now so close she could see the small flecks of green in his blue eyes. "Because for the first time in my life, I feel at home. And home isn't the $10 million mansion where I grew up. It's a 450-square-foot apartment with drawings on the walls and a 4-year-old girl who taught me that family isn't about blood. It's about choice." And then he leaned down and kissed Audrey Simmons for the first time. It was a soft, hesitant kiss, loaded with promises and fears and hopes. A kiss that said, "I choose you in every possible way." When they separated, Audrey was crying openly. "I like you too," she whispered, "and it terrifies me." "Then let's be terrified together," Jonathan suggested, wiping her tears with his thumb. And Audrey, for the first time in 4 years, decided to trust. But at that exact moment, in a mansion across town, Cassandra Webb was finishing a phone call with Marcus Hayes. A deal had been made, money had changed hands, and a trap was being set. The war was just beginning. The bomb exploded on a Monday morning. Audrey was giving Emma breakfast when Rachel burst through the door, cell phone in hand and face ashen. "You need to see this," was all she said before shoving the phone in her friend's face. The headline was devastating. "Webb Hair abandons. Longtime fiancé for waitress." Family in shock. Below were photos of Jonathan with a stunning blonde woman at various events. Gala dinners, award ceremonies, yacht vacations. The caption identified her as Victoria Ashford, socialite and unofficial fiancé of Jonathan Webb for 3 years. There were even photos of them kissing, dated just 6 months ago. The article continued with anonymous statements saying the Webb family was devastated by the sudden breakup, that Victoria was destroyed, and that Jonathan had thrown everything away for a passing whim. "That's a lie," Audrey whispered, but her voice was shaking. "Are you sure?" Rachel asked gently. "Because the photos are pretty real, Audrey. He would have told me. But would he?" A cruel little voice whispered in her mind. They had only known each other for 2 weeks. How much did she really know about Jonathan Webb? Her phone rang. "Jonathan." She didn't answer. It rang again, 5, 10, 15 times. Messages began to arrive. "Audrey, please let me explain. This isn't what it looks like. Victoria and I broke up months ago. The media is distorting everything. Please don't believe them." But Audrey was looking at the photos. at the way Jonathan looked at that perfect woman, at the world to which he truly belonged, a world of designer dresses, expensive jewelry, and beautiful people who would never need to wash dishes to survive. "Mommy, why are you crying?" Emma asked, hugging her mother's leg. And that's what broke Audrey. It wasn't just about her. It was about her daughter, about exposing Emma to this cruel circus, about dragging an innocent child into a war she never asked for. Jonathan arrived at her apartment an hour later, having broken every speed limit on the way. He knocked on the door urgently, shouting her name. When Audrey finally opened it, he almost collapsed with relief. "Thank God. I thought you wouldn't—" "Who's Victoria?" Audrey interrupted, her voice dangerously calm. Jonathan took a deep breath. "My ex. We broke up in March, 8 months ago. The photos are from 6 months ago. Because my mother kept forcing us to go to events together even after we broke up," he explained quickly, "to keep up appearances. Because God forbid the Webbs publicly admit a breakup. You were engaged to her, not officially. Our families wanted it. But I always refused, because I didn't love her, because that was just a convenient arrangement everyone expected." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't think it was relevant," Jonathan answered honestly. "Victoria is the past. It's been 8 months since I've seen her, talked to her, nothing. You're the present, you're the future. But your family doesn't agree, right?" Audrey said bitterly. "To them, Im the waitress who ruined their son's perfect marriage." "My mother is behind this," Jonathan admitted, his jaw tense. "She orchestrated this article, paid some tabloid to distort the story." "So she's capable of that?" Audrey asked, and there was real fear in her voice now. "Of manipulating the media? Of destroying people who get in the way of her plans?" "Yes," Jonathan said miserably. "She is." Audrey felt nausea rising. "Jonathan, I can't do this. I can't fight a woman with infinite resources and zero scruples, not when I have Emma to protect." "Then let's fight together," he insisted, trying to take her hands, but she backed away. "Audrey, please." "Maybe your mother is right," she interrupted, the words hurting as they came out. "Maybe we're impossible. Maybe I'm being selfish, wanting something that will never work." "Don't say that." "Why not?" she exploded. "Because you like me? Because we spent a few lovely days together? That doesn't change reality, Jonathan. I'm a single mother waitress and you're a famous billionaire heir. Our worlds don't mix." "Then we'll create a new world," he shouted back. "A world where it doesn't matter where we came from, only where we're going." "That's fantasy. It's hope." They stood there, panting, looking at each other with pain and frustration and something that looked dangerously like love. Then Audrey's phone rang. It was an unknown number. She answered, still holding Jonathan's gaze. "Hello? Audrey Simmons?" a formal female voice asked. "I'm from the law office of Harrison and Associates. We represent Marcus Hayes. A shared custody lawsuit has been filed on behalf of Emma Hayes Simmons. You'll be formally notified tomorrow. Have a good day," and hung up. Audrey dropped the phone. Her legs failed. Jonathan caught her before she fell, holding her as she began to sob uncontrollably. "He's going to try to take my daughter," she whimpered against his chest. "He's going to use all of this against me. The photos, the media, you. Hell say I'm irresponsible, that I'm putting Emma in danger. And hell win, Jonathan. Hell win because he has money now, and I have nothing." "You have me," Jonathan said fiercely, hugging her tightly. "And I swear by everything that's sacred, he won't win. I won't let him." But in that moment, embracing on the floor of the tiny apartment while Emma slept in the next room, they both wondered if love was enough against so much power. The legal war started fast and brutal. Marcus had somehow gotten money, a lot of money, and hired aggressive lawyers who immediately painted Audrey as a negligent mother. They used every photo with Jonathan, every sensationalist headline, every cruel comment on social media as evidence that she was exposing her daughter to an unstable environment. Jonathan hired the best lawyers money could buy, but that only made things worse. Now Marcus argued that Audrey was being financed by a billionaire in exchange for favors, turning the situation into something even more sordid. The media was having a field day. Every hearing was covered. Every detail leaked. Audrey's life dissected publicly for the masses' entertainment. And then came the lowest blow. In a particularly brutal hearing, Marcus' lawyer presented witnesses, Webb Mansion employees, who confirmed that Audrey had been seen there several times, evidently after spending the night. It was a lie. Audrey had never been to Jonathan's mansion, but the witnesses were convincing, well-dressed, credible, and the judge, an older man with a disapproving expression, was clearly believing them. Young single mother without resources, involved with an extremely rich man, Marcus' lawyer said melodramatically. It's not hard to connect the dots about motivations here. Objection, Audrey's lawyer protested. This is speculation. But it's speculation based on clear behavioral patterns, the other rebutted. Audrey felt the world spinning. She was losing. She was really losing. But then the courtroom door opened, and Beatrice Webb, Jonathan's aunt and a woman who had never shown any interest in family scandals, entered with the bearing of a warrior queen. "Excuse the interruption, Your Honor," she said with a voice that cut the air like a sharp knife, "but I couldn't help overhearing this absurd theatre and needed to intervene." The judge blinked, surprised. "Who are you, ma'am?" "Beatrice Webb, aunt of the supposed billionaire seducer in question." She turned to Marcus' lawyer with a sharp smile. "And I'd like to clarify some grotesque falsehoods being presented here." She then presented evidence, camera records, real testimonies from employees, not the fake ones Marcus had bought, even bank statements showing that Marcus had received suspicious amounts from unknown sources in recent weeks. "And if the court permits," Beatrice continued, staring directly at the judge, "I'd like to testify about this young woman's character. Audrey Simmons works 2 jobs, raises a daughter alone, and never asked my family for a dime. In fact, she repeatedly refused any financial help, because contrary to what this circus is suggesting, she has something rare today, dignity." The silence in the courtroom was absolute. "As for my nephew," Beatrice continued, "yes, he's in love with her, foolishly, completely in love. And for the first time in 28 years, I've seen that boy truly happy. So forgive me if I have no patience for cowardly men." She looked at Marcus with contempt, who abandon daughters and only reappear when they smell money. Marcus was red, furious, but couldn't argue back. The judge drummed his fingers, thoughtful. "I'll need time to evaluate this new information." Hearing adjourned for 2 weeks. It wasn't victory, but it also wasn't defeat. Outside the courtroom, Audrey hugged Beatrice tightly. Thank you so much." "Don't thank me yet, dear," Beatrice said, but she was smiling. "The war isn't over, but at least now we're fighting on equal footing." Jonathan appeared running, having been forced to wait outside so as not to influence the process. When he saw Audrey whole, not arrested, not destroyed, he pulled her into a desperate embrace. "I thought that." He couldn't finish. "Me too," she whispered back. "But it's not over yet." "Then let's finish this," Jonathan said, determination returning to his eyes. Together, and for the first time since the war began, Audrey believed that maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. Epilogue. 6 months later, the court finally gave its verdict. Marcus Hayes would not have custody of Emma Simmons. His motivations were considered opportunistic and financially motivated, especially after it was discovered that the money for the expensive lawyers came from Cassandra Webb, a last desperate attempt to separate Jonathan from Audrey, using the child as a weapon. The Webb matriarch faced charges for bribery and witness tampering. She wasn't arrested, rich people rarely are, but her reputation was destroyed in the social circles she valued so much. A small victory, but significant. Marcus disappeared again, this time forever. Good riddance. Now, on a golden November afternoon, Audrey Simmons was in the kitchen of the new apartment, still modest, but 3 times bigger than the previous one, with a separate bedroom for Emma and even a small balcony, preparing her grandmother's famous carrot cake. The door opened, and familiar voices filled the space. "Mommy!" "Jonathan took me to the park and I saw a huge dog," Emma shouted, running inside with infinite energy. Huge is an exaggeration, Jonathan said, entering behind her with a smile. It was a normal golden retriever. It was gigantic, Emma insisted, already showing drawings she made of said dog. And Jonathan said, maybe we can get a dog someday. Can we, Mummy? Please? Audrey looked at Jonathan with a raised eyebrow. Oh, did he say that? Jonathan had the decency to look embarrassed. I said maybe, in the distant future. Possibly. Distant like tomorrow, Emma asked hopefully. Distant like when you're 12, Audrey corrected, kissing her daughter's forehead. Now go wash your hands. Dinner's almost ready. Emma ran off, leaving the adults alone. Jonathan immediately pulled Audrey by the waist, kissing her slowly and completely. Hi, he murmured against her lips. Hi, she responded, smiling. So, huge dog. She completely exaggerated. He defended himself, but was laughing. And maybe I let slip that Winston, his own bulldog, is getting old and might need company. You're terrible, Audrey said, but was kissing him again. 6 months. 6 months since the final sentence. 6 months of building something real, solid, true. It hadn't been easy. The media still followed them occasionally. Cruel comments still appeared online. The Webb family, except Beatrice and Jonathan's younger brother, who had become surprising allies, still didn't fully approve. But they had something stronger than approval. They had choice. Every day they chose each other. Every day they built their unlikely world together. Jonathan had abandoned his career, but chose projects more carefully, prioritizing time with Audrey and Emma. Audrey had started college for business administration, an old dream finally possible. Emma was thriving in her new school, making friends, being a child without the weight of the world on her shoulders. You know what I realized? Jonathan said as he helped Audrey set the table. It's been exactly 7 months since I walked through that back door of that bar. Best decision you ever made? Audrey teased. Only good decision I ever made, he corrected, pulling her back into his arms. All the others before were preparation for finding you. That was very cheesy, she said, but her eyes were shining. You love when I'm cheesy. Unfortunately, I do, she admitted, kissing him again. Ew, you're kissing again, Emma complained, reappearing in the room. Better get used to it, princess, Jonathan said, winking at her. I plan to kiss your mom many, many times. Can I charge a fee? Emma suggested, like $1 each kiss? I'll go bankrupt in a week, Jonathan laughed. Exactly my plan, Emma said, satisfied, and everyone laughed. They had dinner together, the three of them, talking about their day, making plans for the weekend, arguing about who left the milk out of the fridge again. Normal things, simple things. Things that Jonathan never had in his sterile luxury childhood and Audrey never thought she'd have after being abandoned so young. Later, after Emma fell asleep, Jonathan and Audrey sat on the small balcony, looking at the city lights. Are you happy? He asked quietly. Audrey considered the question, thought about everything they had been through, the cruel media, the legal battles, the judgments, the fears. Thought about how many times she almost gave up, how many times she thought it wouldn't be worth it. Then she looked at the man beside her, the billionaire heir who chose to wash dishes at her bar, who chose to fight for her when it would have been easier to give up, who chose to love not just her, but her daughter too, unconditionally. Yes, she answered, intertwining her fingers with his. For the first time in a very long time, I'm genuinely happy. Good, Jonathan said, kissing their intertwined fingers, because I plan to spend the rest of my life making you happy, if you'll let me. Was that a proposal? Audrey asked, arching an eyebrow. Maybe, he said, smiling mysteriously. Or maybe it's just preparation for a future proposal. You'll have to wait and see. You're impossible, she said, but was smiling too. And you love me like this, he shot back. And it was true. She loved him. Completely, frighteningly, wonderfully. Against all odds, against all expectations, they had built something real. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was better. It was real. It was theirs. And when Audrey Simmons closed her eyes that night, embraced by the man who had entered through the back door of her life and transformed everything, she knew with absolute certainty. Sometimes the best stories begin with someone needing to hide and end with someone finally being found. Did you enjoy this story? If your answer is yes, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave that like and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any updates. This way you're helping me continue bringing exciting stories like this one to you and to other people who, just like you, love a breathtaking romance. Your participation makes all the difference. See you in the next story.